Welcome, everyone, to So Very Wrong About Games, a board gaming podcast about board games. My name is Michael Walker, and I'm here with my special guest, Efka from No Pun Included.
Hi, it's me, Efka. I'm also here.
You're also here. Really, this is going to be a normal episode, except for the extra special part. We have some great news coming up. We're going to talk about the games we played this week. We're going to talk about the news and why it doesn't matter. And then we're going to talk about our main review this week, which is Galactic Cruise.
There's nothing normal about having me on. You know how this works. It's going to be zany antics.
I hope so.
It.
I would be very upset if it wasn't.
And then there's just an entire episode. I'm just going to be like really deadpan.
Yeah, just deadpan. What did you play this week, sir?
I have played. So can we start small? Can we start with a little thing? I know you're a fan of an odd trick taker from time to time. Well, I have an odd one for you. This one is called Cena, like John Cena, but just Cena, right?
It's like a wrestling trick taking game. I like it so far.
No, nothing to do with wrestling.
Oh.
It's something to do with like a medieval feast, and like you have wine and mead and ale or something. I'm not cider. Cider is one of the suits, right?
Oh.
So yeah, I have no idea why it's called Cena. I maybe need to look it up. Maybe it's something Latin to do with medieval times. But so, do you remember a game called Between Two Cities?
Yes.
Now imagine that game but it's a trick taking game where every card I know.
Playing a trick to the left and a trick to the right?
No, this is the weirdest part, right? You play a trick in front of a person, right? And the card has on one side a suit and on another side a number, right? But the card that you play does not form the number in the suit. You have to conjoin it with another card from to your left. So if your suit is on the card's left, you look to the person to the left, and the card they have in front of them, their values to the right, and they can join between you two to form one card, nice. Right? So that's already weird. But then on top of that, you also don't have to play a card in front of yourself. You can play it literally in front of any player. So it's just very zany. So that's the whole thing, right? But
so what part of the card makes it that you win that trick?
Well, so whoever plays the first card will, determine the leading suit effectively. And so two people will win the trick, right? Because the card is between them. And, whoever ends up having the highest value of the lead suit will be the winners of the trick. And they will put the entire trick into their own score pile. Every card in that score pile is a point, but also there are certain cards. So for example, every round there's a different kind of objective, and the objective just means every odd card that's also a wine card is worth let's say -7 points or something like that. So there are these certain cards that you're going to, completely try to avoid, and whether you want to win a trick or not really depends on what's going to end up going into that trick, which you don't know. And also, it's not just your score, it's the score to the person to your left. And, then there's another one with the person to your right. So you have these really uncertain and brittle alliances where let's say two people just got, completely shafted and they have, horrible negative cards in their score pile. Do they just stick it out then as a team, or do they break off in the hopes that maybe this round I'm not going to be scoring a lot, but I'll form an alliance with someone else and hopefully the other person in the team up is going to have even less points than I do? I don't know. That's kind of the game. Is it a gimmick game? Yes. Is it a fun gimmick? Also, yes, I would say. I kind of enjoyed it. It's very zany, but also at the same time, it's impossible to find and get because it's one of those trick takers that's really obscure, and good luck finding it.
So we do a stream every week, and on this stream, usually we do a big game, but we did a bunch of little games. So I'll talk about one of the trick takers we played on that stream. I'm going to compare it to the two games we played there. There was one called Movie Tricks, and the other one is called Wine Cellar. I'm going to compare them because they're both sort of tableau builders where the cards that were used in the previous round are the cards that you're trying to win.
Okay.
In Wine Cellar, it's more of just a straight up auction game. You play down a card, and whoever has the highest card gets to pick first type thing. And then everyone's bid will go into the middle, and you're just trying to set your wines in a certain order in front of you. And everyone has sort of a card that says, you're buying for this particular person. He likes wines of a certain type from a certain area. So you're just trying to build your tableau that way. Movie tricks is something a bit more, though. You have sort of 4 categories in front of you where you're doing like sound effects and props and actors and things, and they all score differently. And they're all sort of based on icons that are on the tricks you're winning. So the special effects, you're just trying to collect a bunch of things, whereas props, you're trying to get a bunch of different symbols. Sound effects, you're just collecting the icons that are on the cards, stuff like that. Oh, the actors one is kind of interesting, where there are villains and heroes on the card, and you want to get an even amount to get some bonus points. And so you're winning those tricks. You're choosing the cards from the middle, and you're lining them up. And as soon as you get one in every line, and that's sort of your movie, and it's kind of neat because it makes this crazy title like Death Riders of the Northern Yukon, right? And so that's also one of the scoring conditions, that you score your highest movie title, because as you line them all up, you look at your highest row, and then you add up your columns. Whatever your lowest column is, that'll get you scores. And then, like I said, all the 4 unique scoring things of all the other 4 categories. So overall, I very much enjoyed it. It was a very different sort of take, as you were, on trick taking. And it's called Movie Tricks. It's designed by Eliassen, Steward, and Eilif Svensson, and Åsmund Stevenson. And Wine Cellar is designed by Andrew Stiles.
I guess the one question I have about the idea of tableau building with trick taking is that it does sound a little zany, because you don't have a lot of control what's going to go into a trick you win, right? And you have to kind of, is there that like moment where you played, like, let's say, a winning card to the trick, you're going to win the trick, but not every card's been played to the trick yet, and you're like, oh no, I don't know what's going to happen. Does that happen?
Not any more than a normal trick taking game. There was a moment near the end, because the card you play is going to seed the pool for the next hand. You sort of gauge it now, right? Because I know I'm going to win this one, and I could win it with this card, which means I'm going to lead. And if I lead, I might win again. So I'll be able to get that card into my tableau. So there was a little bit of that. I think with more plays, that might come more evident of seeding the next pool with cards that you need.
Well, it sounds exciting. I love me a trick taking game. And I kind of regret that you already told me about 2 different ones that I've
Well, I'm gonna sneak in a very quick third one, just because they're very quick trick taking games. Like I said, they're all on stream, so if you want to check them out, they're on, for the listeners there, they're on the live tab of our YouTube channel. This one is called Sweet Takes, and it's done by the master Hayashi. And this is just a Hasbro one. This one you should be able to easily get, because this one I actually ordered off of Amazon, so it is widely available. This one is also very odd. Standard trick taking, cards 1 through 10. And so everyone plays out the cards that they normally would, but then it's the lead suit. So you look at who won with the lead suit. They take all of those cards, and they make sure the one that they won the card with stays face up. And then you go to the next suit that someone played, because maybe they didn't have a lead card, and whoever played the highest card of that suit takes that card. So you sort of like divide each hand up into each suit, and whoever has the highest card in that suit will win it. And like I said, the winning card is face up, because each card has like a little scoring on it. So the higher cards are worth maybe 1 point, whereas the 2s and 3s are worth 4 and 5 points. And so it's got this really interesting thing where you have 3 cards, you have your hand of 9 cards and 3 cards face down in front of you. And at any time, you can just flip over one of those 3 cards as the card you're going to play. And so it's got this interesting thing where normally you want to play off low cards, like I'm going to lose this. There's no way I can win this hand. So I'm going to fluff off these low cards. But with this one, you don't want to do that, because you want to be able to throw those away later on, as the only suit of that color type thing. So I win with this 2 because it's the only yellow card, and that's a ton of points. So face up cards are worth what they're worth, and all the face down other cards that you win that were in that suit are worth 1 each. And then once you go through those 12 hands, whoever has the most points wins. It's called
It's like just a standard must follow kind of thing, but like with this one added thing. That sounds really neat. Like, I do like Hisashi Hayashi's games, but I mean the one trick taking game of his that I've played is the 18xx Trick of the Rails. There we go, right? And that one is just wild. It's like I remember playing it and going, I don't know if this or hate this. I'm so confused. Like it's so different. And this sounds like the opposite of that, where it's just like, hey, it's just a must follow thing with like a nice little twist. I know that you are not remind me if this is true. You're not necessarily a fan of Inish, right?
No, I would play it, but yeah, we're not a huge fan. Just mostly only because, a single player, like either that is either new or doesn't understand how the game works exactly, can break the game very quickly.
Well, I have played the latest expansion to Inish, Nemed, and let me tell you, that element, it will not make better, because it's just like this small, tiny addition that makes the game way more zany and way more wild. I really enjoyed it. I had a very good time. It felt like an event game. So playing it with people who've all played Inish before and were familiar, like adding that little kind of new thing in was pretty cool. So Inish Nemed is an expansion that adds 2 modules, and you can incorporate either of them or both if you want to, but it's not really recommended because, then the game is just out of control. So we played with module 2, which is it adds the nemetons. So how like the Inish tiles are these really craggly, weird shaped things? You can arrange them in such a way that there's like a little hole in between 3 tiles, right? And if you ever do that deliberately as part of the game, right, you insert this small tile that fits that gap perfectly called a nemeton, right? So what that does is it now has it gives you a new action that's possible on your turn. Instead of like playing a card or whatever, you add this, you basically activate a nemeton that I think you have to be like adjacent to it to activate it or something like that. You have to have presence next to it. And so then that nemeton will always have like a scoring condition, for example, most sanctuaries or whatever. And what that does is then it checks those 3 tiles around that nemeton and sees which player amongst them has, is chieftain over the most sanctuaries. Or not chieftain, like has control. I can't remember what the terminology is. And then that person will get a D token. And as you know, the D token is the token that's like 1+ towards any victory condition, right? So it's like an additional way to propel yourself towards victory. And let me tell you, we didn't do it once in the in the entire game. Like we had these little gaps for these tiles, and I think like 2 of them came out, right? And someone does like automatically get the D token, but like the fight over them didn't really necessarily happen. But that doesn't make it necessarily a bad or not impactful expansion, because it's just the new tiles in general. Just the new tiles in general that it adds are so out there, because like they designed the normal ones, right? So they have to give you the really absurd ones. One that really springs to mind is called Arena of Lu, as in the Irish deity Lu. And so whoever has control of that tile once per round can play the card that says, okay, everyone puts 1 piece on this tile, and now we all initiate a clash, and you must fight. You cannot back out of the clash. You must perform 1 maneuver. And so every round is just this random fight out of nowhere for no reason. And it's always the person that controls it that starts it. So they immediately go, right, I'm going to kill you. And yeah, so and the joke, of course, is that like, oh, obviously it's called Arena of Lu, but it's arena. We said it as Arena of Love because like it's just everyone fighting in a friendly embrace. Yeah, it's good. I liked it. I liked the sort of whimsiness that it added, because I don't think Inish is a particularly serious game. I think it is a silly game fundamentally, and adding these zany tiles kind of pushes it more in that direction. Obviously not great for new players, but I had a fun time. There's also a second module. I didn't play it yet, but I can briefly talk about it, because all it does is it basically, when you have a sanctuary, you can now assign it to like a special tile. There are 3 tiles that are drawn at the beginning of the game. So you can assign it to one of these tiles with a miniature. Then what that does is, then if you have presence, you can take an action there. Instead of playing a card, you can pay like a little sacrifice, but then get an advantage. So it's a way of being able to do something without having the card to do it. just that it costs you something, sort of bypasses the impact of the draft. And that's why we didn't immediately jump towards that module. But I don't know. It would be interesting to try it out.
So those little mini tiles that go in between the holes you make,
Yes.
do they change after people score them?
No, they always, that tile always stays the same. So you can basically, for example, there's one tile that says whoever has the least presents. Like, so you still have to be present. So it can't be 0, right? It has to be 1. But then, you want to have as little as possible, but then you're opening yourself up to, what if someone just initiates a clash and takes my little guy out, and then I have nothing, right? And then they can reevaluate that as an action, and then the deed token changes.
That sounds sounds interesting for sure. How long, do you have any idea how long your game took? Because I'm all for zany fun, but when it takes, 2+ hours, then it just sort of...
I think it was 2+. I think it was under 3 though, but we were on a kind of a board game getaway, and it was the last game of the evening, so it felt pretty appropriate for that kind of environment.
All right, I'm going to talk next about a game that also normally takes too long. It's called Star Trek Ascendancy, and this is the giant sci-fi based in Star Trek.
Just like Mage Knight?
Just like Mage Knight, that takes several hours usually, but we played with a new expansion called the Borg Assimilation, and this targets like 2 problems. Like, do you have too many players and it takes too long? Well, this plays best with 2 and takes hardly any time, you see, because you're trying to not get assimilated. And guess what? We got assimilated very quickly. Got a little bit of a rule wrong after I read afterwards. It probably wouldn't have worked quite that way, but it is awfully nasty. It's 2-player, like sort of co-op against the Borg. So you take your turns, and then the Borg slowly assimilates planets, and you need to stop them from doing that. Star Trek Ascendancy is sort of like an action mechanism where you have these action tokens. You flip them over as you do stuff. You try to, you're finding these warp lanes, and you're going out to planets, and you flip over a random planet card, and they could be friendly or neutral or warp technology, and either you incorporate them into your whatever Federation or Klingon or Borg or Korn or whatever you decide. They think they have every single race that is known into the Star Trek universe now. It's a Gale Force 9 game, and they just finished a giant Kickstarter for it. So any sort of race that you'd like to play, I'm sure they have it. And it didn't go well, like I said. We were quickly assimilated, and the game ended. It solves all those problems Star Trek Ascendancy have. It's no longer an all-day game. It is a play until you're a Borg type thing.
So is the base game cooperative?
No, not at all.
No, so so this is like kind of changes it up so that you're playing against the system?
Yes, for sure. There is like sort of all different sort of ways you can play this type thing. They say, you can play it where if someone gets assimilated, then they're the Borg, and you continue playing as the Borg against the one other player. But they also say you can play it all sorts of different ways, where if one player dies, then the game is over, or stuff like that.
All right. Do you have a feeling what you would prefer? Do you think it would work, someone then controlling the Borg, or is it like too automated?
No, it would definitely work, because a lot of the stuff is random. It's like which direction the Borg goes in. You can sort of fudge it a bit. It's like, oh, go towards the nearest system. Okay, well, you sort of like branch it off slightly to the left so it doesn't quite go directly towards your systems and stuff like that. I think it definitely would work.
I mean, I am happy for you. I think the barrier for me is immediately like, first, I would have to experience Star Trek Ascendancy, and if it is a game that takes all day long, I don't know if I have that in me.
It all depends how many players you're playing, and are there new players, right? Does everyone know what they're doing? And then, because the teach is pretty long, it's fairly, in-depth teach, because of all the different things you can do and how the warp gates work, and how, because you have 3 different types of modules that you're building on the planets, and there's build phases and ships cost, and, are you going to form a fleet or not a fleet, and then technology decks and all the rest of it.
It sounds very involved. It sounds like what FFG used to make in the old days, as they say.
Just so.
Talking of games that take way too long, Michael, I have played Vita Lacerda's Speakeasy, and I've played it twice in 1 week, and I feel like that is some sort of an achievement. Like they should make a little like rosette for it.
I was about to say, it should come with a component that you hold up and someone takes your picture and they get to post it. I survived 2 Lacerda games in 1 week and my brain is still intact. Yes.
Well, actually, holding up my hand, it was 3 Lacerda games in 1 week. It was 2 Speakeasies and 1 The Gallerist. So, the Gallerist being much more, approachable, I guess is the right word for it in terms of length and comprehension, because Speakeasy is definitely one of those Lacerda games that it's your first 5 games are like, I'm just trying to understand how I actually get to do what I want to do, and then the strategy will come. But there are some broad strokes of strategy. So obviously set in the in the 1920s Prohibition era, and you're playing as one of the people who open up the speakeasies. You're not a mobster technically, because there is like a mob, right? That's like, I don't want to call it a dummy player, because it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, someone fills in some spaces, right? There are spaces that are filled in by a dummy player, but that dummy player is very much part and parcel of active play, because it's present in all player counts, right? It's just like this presence that will exist on the entire map through some course of the game. Like, you begin with some sectors being populated by the mob, and there the mob is weak, so it's easy to take over. But you could also build somewhere where there isn't a mob. That's easier right now, but then when the mob eventually does come in, it could have much higher strength, and so defending those speakeasies that you build is going to be much more difficult. The crux of the game is that you do want to build all these speakeasies and casinos and whatever, because in a rare exemption, speakeasies, Vita Lacerda game where your money is your score at the end of the game, and all these establishments, there's like pickup and delivery mini game where first, like, you build a still and then you make the alcohol, and you have a little truck, and you can put the little barrels into the truck and physically drive it across the map and then deliver it to the speakeasies, where you will eventually sell them for money, and how much money depends on your reputation and what kind of speakeasy you're selling it to, and so on and on and on. So there's a lot of like different levers. There's a lot of little bonuses that you can, just finagle out of thin air, because you're like, oh, I have this thing and that, and then if I do this and then that and then that and then that, well, no, wait, I can't do that because I forgot that I'm actually not allowed to do it. So then wait, I have to think about my turn all over again. And so there's a lot of this happening in the game. But the crux of the matter is that you are building these speakeasies, and some spaces are easy to build at the beginning of the game, and some spaces are hard, because not only will the mob come in, also the police comes in and just completely just shuts them down. And you have to send this like little guy called a family man, I think. They have an automatic rifle, and so they just sit in front of the speakeasy and like, no, it's operational, actually, the cops, don't worry about them. And yeah, like the mob, the cops will be present in all spaces of the board. And again, do you want to build and sort it out now, or do you want to do it later and maybe it will be a problem? But there are free areas, and there isn't like an area majority game as well. This is the weird part of the game that I'm not quite getting yet, because this is super simple, right? The middle area is worth the least money at the end of every era, right? The left area is worth a bit more, and the right area is worth the most. And the only difference between them nominally is that if you're in the middle, it's easier to transport things because you're in the middle, right? The left one is further away, and the right one is also further away, but also it's segmented, so it's harder to get around. And that's seems to be the crux of the grand strategy of the game, which really puzzles me, because the game is so complex. There's so many things happening. But the central idea of it is, where do you want to build? The safe area or the not safe area? That's it.
It seems like it's a little bit more streamlined than other Lacerdas. Like, your goals seem much clearer than, like, say, Weather Machine, where it's like, we're trying to do what? No. A red gear. Okay.
I will admit, Weather Machine is the only Lacerda game I have not played. The reason I have not played it is because I was like, okay, nope. Just nope.
No, not yet.
Yeah, don't want to. And not because it's like, I don't know if it is, it's hard to grade them, how much more they are complex, you know, as opposed to another one, apart from like the Gallerist, which is definitely like the easiest out of all of them. But this one, I don't know, it sits somewhere in the middle because like the sort of, the idea of the game is simple: make money by building, you know, speakeasies, and then it's kind of area control, and you want to keep them operational, you want them to produce booze and so on. But there's so many elements. There are way more elements than in any other Lacerda game. And unlike other Lacerda games, it is so very... It's not entirely true. Like in other Lacerda games, what other people do matter, but I don't think it matters to this extent where there is also area majority. And so I played a 2-player game of this and we finished it and we thought, oh, that was cool. You know, that was quite enjoyable. It's interesting. And we played a 4-player game. I do have to put a caveat here. I say played, we did DNF it because that 4-player game was just too much. Like we felt like we should play 2 groups of 2, you know, like maybe 3 games of Speakeasy, each 2 groups, right? And then we can conjoin and maybe play a 4-player game of this where we're so used to these systems that we can actually feel like we have a handle, even though things start changing too quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Where when you see something happen, you know why it happened and you know how to react to it. And yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, I'm hearing lots of good things, and a lot of people have it in the area, so maybe I'll have to give it a try now. We'll see. He's hurt me before, Efka.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
I played today a game called Black Forest. This is by Uwe Rosenberg, and this is Tido Lorenz. I haven't seen very many joint designs with Uwe Rosenberg, but this is one of them. And it has this very interesting... Have you ever played Black Forest?
I have, yes.
So it's a little bit like Glass Road, and it's got this very interesting sort of how you manage your stuff, your resources, because your glass makers really like to make glass, and as soon as they can, they will make it. So it has this dial system that is not under actual pressure, but you have to, when you explain the game to people, you say it's under pressure. This thing is going to try to turn whenever it can. So as soon as let's say, as an example, get some sand. Now there's a gap on this dial, so it's going to move. And it's very interesting because it's almost like magic, because there's all these little numbers on it, and it looks like I have some water and some coal. And when the dial moves, they all just automatically go down by 1. And over here on the left-hand side, my glass goes up by 1. So magical that way. And so every time you can make glass, you make glass. And so you're trying to sometimes anchor that wheel so it won't turn, because you're desperately trying to get enough wood to build this building. But every time someone will give you like a free coal, it's like, stick your coal somewhere else. And they're doing it on purpose, Efka. They look over you, they know you're trying to get that building. And it's like, oh, if he just gets one more coal, he'll make glass again. So I'll go to this space where everybody gets a coal. And look at that, I made a glass, and now I don't have enough wood again. So that's the dial on the right. The dial on the left is people that really like to make you food. But food's good because every time you move around, it's a worker placement game, and you're traveling around, and every time you travel to a new village, you need supplies. So the other wheel, every time it turns, it's going to get you supplies. So that's well and good because you use those all the time. Sometimes that wheel messes you up a little bit, not as much as the other wheel. Anyway, I love it. It's just the color palette, everything looks great. It's semi-historical. It's in the Black Forest. You're you're clear cutting things to fuel your glass works. And so when all the wood's gone in that area, you sort of pick up your glass shop and move it to this, center of a wooded area again. And historically, this is true. And the village would sort of follow you because that's where the money is. That's where all the transactions take place. And so villages sort of floated, into the Black Forest as they clear-cutted areas down. It's a great game. I will like to play it anytime I can.
So I've never been to the Black Forest, but I have skirted past it on a train, and it looked magical from a distance. It looked really beautiful. I'm glad we're in agreement. I love this game as well. I think it's really neat. One thing that I will add to this, yes, the mechanism is evil with the dials, right? But so this is entirely speculation on my part, but I've noticed that there is a little bit of a pattern here. So for example, when Uwe Rosenberg designed A Feast for Odin, it's just his name on the box. But when there is an expansion, there's now 2 names on the box. And my suspicion that it is a developer taking the design and adding their own spin. And I think that's what happened with Glass Road and Black Forest here, is that the developer took so they're credited as a co-designer. They took Glass Road and expanded it into this, map thing, which I like a lot, because it's such a great way of communicating to other people what other players are going to do. And it adds a really nice element of interactivity. I found Glass Road to not be memorable. Like, I played it, but I couldn't tell you anything about it apart from the wheels, right? They exist. I know that much. I remember it. But with Black Forest, I was quite smitten immediately, because there was that, like, it was easier to read what other players are planning on doing, because their options are more evident to you. And also, I really like the array of like 36 or however much there are buildings, and
close to 40.
Yeah. And just how much, because you like flip 10 every game to the other side. And so that means that the puzzle is never quite the same. And I know it's like such a small thing, but it guarantees that there isn't ever this moment where like someone solves it. Do you know what I mean? I was like, you buy this building and
there's not like if you don't open properly, you've ruined your game. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that strangely, even though there's so much, it feels like it makes it more approachable, because you can say to people, hey, even though this is your first game, it's kind of like almost like a first game for everyone. Not in terms of the wheels, obviously, because I think it takes a game to get used to that system, and it's very easy to be punished by it. But also that the sort of the grand scope of strategy, I think, is more approachable to everyone, if that makes sense.
The one part that was difficult was teaching it, right? Because I like to always open the teachers. This is where your points are going to come from. And I feel Feast for Odin and this game is the same. It's like there's nothing to pin down where your points are going to come from. There's such an array of things you can do and avenues you can pursue to get different kinds of points. It's like, well, glass is worth some points at the end, but you can only ever have 4 of them, so that's not good. You can sort of say, well, these buildings is where you're going to get points. Take your time looking through all 40 of those, and we'll get back to that later. And then that was just the 40 small buildings. We're not talking about, there's also, half a dozen of these large buildings that you have to try to fit into your network as well. And also because Rosenberg, we have to have the pigs and the cows as well. So lots of things to do.
What do you mean we have to? We want them. We want the pigs and the cows, right?
There's no breeding phase. So don't be upset when you play Black Forest and you're waiting for the breeding phase to happen. There's no breeding phase in the Black Forest. And that's Black Forest.
Michael, have you heard of a game called The Presence?
No, I have not.
Okay, so this is either going to be entirely your jam or so not your jam. So imagine Betrayal at the House on the Hill, right? We're all familiar, right? And we're all familiar that Betrayal at the House on the Hill is a big disappointment, because it promises you this like, oh, you're all in a haunted house, but one of you secretly and then, something happens and it's completely random and no one understands the rules and it's annoying and frustrating and none of it works, right? So imagine the promise of that game, but like it actually works. So from the get-go, one player plays as the ghost. You're in a haunted house, and everyone else is kind of like investigators trapped in this house. The ghost, and this is in the beginning game, by default, the 50% chance whether they're good and there to help the other players, or evil and working against the other players. So, and that's not, the ghost is not in charge of that. They're like, they draw a card and they know what they are, right? But it is a 50-50 chance, right? And so, and then everyone, kind of takes their turns, they'll go around the house, look at clues, and there's this whole like deduction system where there are like the 4 traumas of the ghost that they have. These 4 cards, and the objective of the game is that you don't know the order in which these cards are, but you get these special clue cards and they belong to the 4 suits of these traumas. And so you want to play these clue cards because they're like more powerful versions of the things that you can do. But when you play them, you have to assign them to one of these 4 secret cards. And when you reveal these 4 secret cards, you want the suits to match of the clues that you've played, right? So there's a kind of a deduction element happening, and the number of clues dictates that you find in the clue deck dictates the order of these cards, because during setup, basically the way you arrange these secret 4 cards that you have to reveal, there's one that's going to have the most, and then there's another one that's going to have less, and then you compose that clue deck like that. Let's say I drew a card and it has the coffin, which is like the death trauma, right? And then I draw another coffin, and then I draw another coffin. I'm like, wait, I think coffin is on the left because I keep drawing coffins. I keep seeing them, there's a good chance. So you kind of have to hedge your bets. So there's this whole deduction game going on, right? But then it comes to the ghost's turn. And the ghost in this brilliant move is not allowed to talk about the game at all. Like nothing at all. They can say words, they can communicate with players normally, but just they can't react at all to what happens in the game and what they do in the game, what other players do in the game. And why I think this is brilliant is that it makes it not a social deduction game, right? Because the ghost's actions then, they're always silver linings. They could do something bad, but with a silver lining of like, actually this might be great though, right? Or they could do something great, but wait, the downside is actually quite sinister. And so you're not trying to piece together how the ghost behaves. You're trying to piece together like just the margins of their actions, if that makes sense. Like, was this actually good for us, or was this terrible? We don't
care
know.
if he's good or bad. If he's bad, then this has implications. Whereas if he was good, these have other implications.
Exactly, right? So very interesting. The immediate criticism I have is that the rulebook's terrible and it's quite hard to learn the game. And there's this whole system, for example, of like, if you're in a room and all the doors shut around you, you can't talk to other players, right? Which is kind of weird because the other players can still talk to you. But like the idea is that you can't, if you get like a new clue card, you can't discuss what you just got. I think that's the implication. But it felt quite unnatural. And it does say, in your first game, just mostly ignore this rule, because it's going to be hard. So it definitely wants you to play it more than once. And, I think the big suggestion towards that is that there's a whole campaign where you like unlock these ghosts or whatever. But that makes it even harder to kind of learn because there's all these cards and pieces and whatnot that you're not supposed to interact with. And when you're learning and setting up, it's a lot, But it's very ambitious, and I'm intrigued to play more of it.
Was this a crowdfunding campaign?
I think so.
I'm looking through the picture. It really much feels like it is. And it would also explain the bad rule book, because that's right. The rule, if you have a campaign, it must have a bad rule book.
I think this is definitely a first-time designer. And it that can be felt, but it's also one of those games that feels very, very ambitious in terms of like grand scope and idea, because I don't think I've played a game that's quite like that, where it wants to almost be like a social deduction game, but it isn't, because the social part is eliminated. It's more about like analyzing game actions. And that feels very interesting.
Now, it feels though what will pull this together is how long it takes to play.
I think it entirely depends on player count. I've played I've played the learn to play scenario twice. Once with 4 players, so 3 players and a ghost, and once with 3 players, 2 players and a ghost. And 2 players and a ghost, I think, took a couple of hours. But again, learning, because the system is quite different to anything else. And then the 4-player game took quite a bit longer.
Seems a little long, I think, for that type of game. But it all depends if it's interesting. If things are happening the whole time, then
it's definitely an event game. It feels like one of those, like we're committing to something big here.
All right. And that is the presence. Lastly, for me, this is called Duplic. It is a great party game, and I'm glad I got it. Have you played Duplic?
I've not even heard of it. I am looking at the cover right now.
So one person has a picture, and they're going to be the teller, let's say, and on the back there's going to be some questions, but no one gets to see those, not even the person that's describing the picture. and so now he has 90 seconds to get the other players to draw the picture that he has in front of him.
Right.
Okay. And no one is allowed to ask him any questions. He is just to describe it. And I found it was hilarious because you're trying to get as much detail because you have no idea what the questions about the picture are on the back.
Right. I see.
So you're racing through this, and then you look over and you see them fiercely draw, and you're like, oh, wait, I better slow down because they're trying to get all this down on paper, and you're racing through everything 90 seconds 2 alligators. They have 4 teeth each. They're in the water. There's a boat with 5 people. One of them has holding a baby and has a hat, and you no way you're drawing all this that fast. So they're drawing. And then once the sand timer runs out, all the drawers pass their drawings one space to the left or right, and then you flip over the card and you go through those things, and they're roughly like the things I said. How many teeth do you see? How many people are in the boat, and 10 different questions like that, and they get everyone gets a tick, if they got that on their picture. And then the person that told the story goes through and they get a tick if anyone had a tick type thing. And so you score it that way. And it was loads of fun. It was everything I wanted it to be and more.
Somewhere midway through your explanation, I stopped listening to what you were saying, went on a website, bought the game, put it in the shopping cart, checked out. I was like, I got it. I'm sold.
Wait, there's a knock on the door. Instant shipping. Sweet. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sold. This sounds great.
Yeah, it was
I
great.
can't wait to try it.
Yeah, this was, I want to give credit where credit's due, is this Mark from Board Game Barrage. He talked about it when he was on the show. Mm-hmm. That and Sweet Takes. I got both of those in because he sold them to me as well. This is the painful part of having guests on the show. They talk about games and then you want to buy them. And
well, I don't think I made you buy Speakeasy. I don't think that's happened. I didn't notice you checking anything out.
I can look over it. I can see Weather Machine there. That is the last Lacerda that I'll have for quite a while until something grabs me, and nothing has yet. And those are the games that we played last week. Now a quick break to pay some bills. And we're back with the news and why it doesn't matter. And I like to welcome Efka from No Pun Included. He is a great YouTube channel that reviews games, is very popular. I'm sure I'm saying this. I'm sure no one that is listening to this episode needs me to introduce him. When I looked last night, your latest video is your top games of 2025. Have you put out a video since then?
I have not, but there is one coming sometime this week. I imagine maybe Friday. So if you're listening to this when this airs, there will be a video soon called Endeavor Deep Sea and the Turn 1 Trap. So it has a little review with a little topic added onto it.
Yeah, I have a player that plays with us, and that is one of his favorite games, so I do have it in rotation a lot. And they just had a crowdfunding, so we have to keep it until that comes in.
I do like this game a lot, by the way. I really do enjoy it as well. I think there was just something in that game that sparked like a subject that I wanted to discuss because it's interesting. That's all I'll say about it. I'll just, I'll put in a little hook there, and hopefully it sparks intrigue.
And some more spoilers. We had Efka decided to make his number one game of 2025 a game that you can't get. It's impossible to find. So that's great.
I mean, it will be possible, though. That's the thing. I think there's a broad kind of concerted effort to have it released in places. I think if you're in America, you can pre-order it now. It'll be available in summer. If you're in UK, you can pre-order it from a website called Travel Games. They're the only ones who are going to have it properly in stock. But it will be available sometime in Q2, which might be even earlier than summer. And in France, you can pre-order it as well. It's releasing imminently. So there will be places to pick it up.
Sorry, I don't think we've said the name of the game.
It's Eternal Decks.
Eternal Decks, that's right.
And I have just played it yesterday once again. And people were like, okay, this is very intriguing. I'm intrigued. And then the magic started happening at the end. And it is proper magic where you're like, there is no way we can win this. We are completely done. This, like, that's it. And I'm like, just chill. Just, we can, let's play to our best outs. And then it starts congealing into this impossible victory. And everyone was sitting there and going, how did that happen? How did we win? I don't get it. And I'm like, that's the magic of the game. So I wish everyone a play of Eternal Decks. It really is very, very special.
It looks very much like it's language independent.
It is.
My local online retailers luckily getting French copies in. So hopefully that will be soon.
There's one exception. There are some cards that have special abilities, so you would need like there's only symbols on the cards, but there's like a little cardboard slab with text, so you would need a printout for that. But otherwise, it is language independent.
Yeah, and I think I was looking at it just to make sure before I ordered it, and I think there's some of the places like the caves or the tunnels, and I'm sure there'll be they won't be. They'll be in French or whatever language you buy, so that
Yes.
won't look right. But I don't think it really matters. I don't think are they referenced in the game, the different locations? Are they referenced on the cards?
No, you just need to look them up in the rulebook in terms of like what that means.
Yeah.
And, so for example, there's like a place called the Swamp, and that dictates the rules for that particular row of cards. So it just basically, so for example, some rows you have to play them, in ascending order, that's the mountain, or descending order, that's the cave. And then the Swamp is like special rules where it's like, hey, you have to play it within this particular sequence of colors. So first blue, then say yellow, then red, and so on, right? But the iconography on the cards makes that evident. So you're like, oh, okay, I don't know what this word says, swamp in French. I don't know what's swamp in French. I'm sure Elaine could tell me if she were here, or Mark if he was here, but then I wouldn't be. So yeah, there we go. But yeah, no, it's fine. You can definitely get a French copy and you'll be okay.
Speaking of Elaine, she is on the show, and her top game of the year is the game we're going to be talking about later. Was it not? Was it not?
It is.
Galactic
Yeah, it
Cruise?
absolutely is. Yeah, Galactic Cruise.
And you guys also have you still are doing the podcast, correct?
Okay,
and moving on.
I don't want to answer that right now, but like,
Gotcha.
it's not, no, we're not doing the podcast. We're just in a kind of a hibernation state in terms of trying to figure out what that's going to look like in the future, because the way it is right now isn't working for us, if that makes sense. So we want to create the best work-life environment. And currently we're just putting a lot of effort into making cool little videos.
So check out, I'll have the link to his YouTube channel in the show notes. So definitely check that out. And like I said, I'm sure 99.9% of the people already do. More news. This is episode 400. That is not the only big news. SwagCon 2 Electric Boogaloo, everyone, is happening this year. I felt I didn't have enough on my plate. You see, running the podcast by myself now, having a normal job, I thought, more on the plate, please. They say you can't burn a candle at both ends. Well, I threw the candle into the sun and said, watch.
400 candles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This is how it's done. So July 24th to the 26th will be SwagCon 2. It is happening. Just like the last one, it will be limited to the first 100 people. So Patrons, make sure you check your feeds. It'll be coming up soon. They'll get first grab at most of the tickets. The
Is Mark going to be there?
I'm not putting anything on Mark's plate. Mark's plate is already full. Much like mine is now. See, I just wanted to match Mark. He had a full plate. I said, that looks pretty good. I think I need a full plate as well.
Everything in a Yorkshire pudding, right?
Exactly. Just so. And so this next statement is not to boost anything. We did sell out last year, but it was like not till the very end type thing. So it is limited to 100 people. If you plan on coming, make sure you grab your ticket. They will be $50. Just to cover the cost of the hall, and that's about it. Like last time, all sorts of free food, free stuff. We lock the door on Sunday. You don't get to leave until you take a game, because that was pretty well what drove me to do it this year. I think it's like, okay, I need to be able to walk down here again, which I cannot. We're sitting here just because the ceiling is right there, because we've just sort of raised the floor, and the board games are like the new floor. That's how we roll here now.
Yeah.
And any other more news, more show news, just because we have to keep up to date. This is a divisible by 5, and this is the one and only time we talk about the Patreon. Mark has done tons of stuff in the past. We do Pledge of Indifference, which is our crowdfunding stuff. You get unedited episodes. You get all sorts of extra stuff. Check out a Patreon page if that is something you'd like to see.
I don't mean to brag, but as a swag patron, I will say that I enjoy Pledge of Indifference very much. It's a great show. It keeps me up to date on everything that's going on, because as much as, I do get a lot of marketing emails, but even I can't keep track of everything. And I often do find out about upcoming games from your Patreon.
Nice. It's good to hear. Thank you. I have one actual board game that I like to talk about, because I don't know, Richard Garfield, everyone knows him from Magic. He did do a board game, believe it or not. He did a game called Robo Rally.
Yes.
And now there's going to be Robo Rally Dice.
Oh, no.
So much like the Borg cutting down on the time, Robo Rally takes too long.
Yes.
It's a game that takes too long.
Yes.
I haven't read the full rule book for Robo Rally dice, but it just seems as though you roll the dice, they have arrows and other stuff on them, you plug them into the different slots like you would in Robo Rally, and there's also the equipment that you get in Robo Rally. They also have dice slots, so you have to divide your dice up accordingly. It looks like there's just 3 small maps. I'm very much hoping this is just going to reduce the time, make it quick, and still give you that feel of the mayhem, conveyor belt stomper craziness that Robo Rally was.
I mean, I've heard tale that's the intended experience. I've not personally experienced that craziness. I just experienced a very long game. So I look forward to Robo Rally fulfilling the promise that it always promised me.
It's when you're forced to shut down on a conveyor and you think you're safe, and in the back of your head you hear the music, dun 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 dun. It's old Bugs Bunny episode, and these stompers start pounding down, and you're just staggering through the stompers, and then the last second, bam, your robot's flattened like a pancake. Love it.
I mean, that is funny.
And that's the news and why it doesn't matter. Now on to our main review is Galactic Cruise, designed by TK King, Dennis Northcott, and Colton Thompson. Now, 2 of those designers have designed one other game beforehand back in 2020. They designed a game called Deliver Us or
Delivirus. Yeah, right.
Delvirus? Something.
Delivirus. But
Delivirus.
I think that's a different game altogether because I don't think anyone wants a Delivirus.
No.
Yeah.
They shut that down usually.
Yeah. I don't think this is a game anyone played because I remember looking this up when we were making our review of Galactic Cruise, and I think it had 3 ratings on BGG. All of them are 7s, and one of them I think is by the designers themselves or something like that. There's not much there.
So that was the 2 of them, just not Dennis Northcott. So the 3 of them have now designed this. And for an unhelpful summary of what is Galactic Cruise, you are designing cruise ships while in the background running those cruises. So the cruises happen sort of automatically in the background while you're busily trying to create more ships and get them ready to send out, advertise them, get people on them, hope people don't take the ships that you advertised for and get them out into space. It is a masterclass in action efficiency, and there is a lot going on. I'm sure we're not going to touch on everything, but the design work, like sort of the layout of everything, it's Ian O'Toole does the art.
Yes.
And Ian O'Toole is great, but it looks like an Ian O'Toole game.
It does.
Like, sure, there's some trees on this board for some reason. Like, I guess these are supposed to be buildings and there's trees there. But anyone walking past will not get any sort of clue on what's going on in this game. There is a little bit of, fun and whimsy in the little modules that you're going to put into your spaceship. But other than that, it's just a heavy symbology looking game.
It is. I will say, so here's my kind of defense of Ian O'Toole, who I'm quite friendly with. We always hang out at Essen Spiele when we're both at Essen Spiele. So just a little biased disclaimer. But when we were playing Speakeasy, I'm glad I brought up Speakeasy earlier.
I was going to say, do you have any, Lacerda 2? Do you have any other name drops you want to get out of your system now? No? Okay.
Just Ian.
Okay.
I have played Grand Budapest Hotel with Vital Lacerda once. And I remember it was 1 a.m. in this dingy hotel room. And I remember doing very badly. But as badly as I did not do as badly as Vital. There were 2 players who knew exactly what was going on. And then there was us 2 complete buffoons, just going, oh, da-da-da-da.
It's 1 a.m. I'm just conscious. Good stuff.
Yeah, right. So with Ian, and we made this observation when we played Speakeasy, and this is not the first time that anyone's made this observation, but I think, I'm not sure I'm correct in this, but I think The Gallerist was his first commissioned, his first work in board games. So I think he began with Vital Lacerda. It's going to be a tie between that and Martin Wallace's Study in Emeralds, second edition. He did the art for that as well. So I don't think Vital Lacerda games would be possible without Ian O'Toole. I like he makes passing all the complexity of those games understandable. And I know that, as with all games, there are going to be ones where that works better, and in some games it maybe doesn't work quite as well. All work has broad range of quality, even if it's from the same person. But I think that Galactic Cruise is maybe his best work in that regard, because that game is like, I don't need to open the rule book. I'm like, okay, I remember how to play this. I look at everything. I know what's going on. The icons tell me exactly what I need to do to achieve what I want to do. The only bit where it becomes a little woolly was like when you're actually launching the rocket, and there's like 7 different steps, and they all have unique iconography, because it's exclusive to this part of the game what's happening. But even then, with some practice, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I need to do this, then this, then this, then this, then that. Okay, got it, right? So I think Ian is excellent at making these like very, very complex games understandable once you internalize that iconography, because it takes care to display everything in a logical way. Like if this icon is slightly different from this other icon, which look almost identical, but one has an arrow and it doesn't, I understand what that arrow then says to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know what's going on. I just need to do this instead of that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not knocking anything about the iconography itself, right? I think that's all great. But I mean, if you were to set up several board games on tables, right, this being one of them, and you had people go and look at them and tell you what this game is about without knowing anything, if they looked at Galactic Cruise, I don't think they would have any idea what was going on there.
I mean, I can give you that. It's not Everdell, is it? There's not like a giant cardboard tree that says it's cute woodland critters, right?
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, there is that moment of like building these rockets together, and they look like so retro that like I'm like, okay, that's cute, and that does speak to the theme a little bit. And I also like that he secretly put Zig and Zag in it, which I don't know if you know who Zig and Zag are. This was a learning for me as well. This is like sort of a British thing, but they were more popular in Ireland before they were popular in Britain. These cartoon puppets from the 90s that messed around, and they're meant to be aliens, and so there are some aliens in Galactic Cruise, and they are legally distinct Zig and Zag.
Yep. Like I said, when you're playing it, it gushes with theme for sure.
Yeah.
But not knowing what's going on is hard to figure out. And I think the learning curve to this game is like a launch trajectory. It's is a lot to get into. And like the game I talked about last week, Sweetlands.
Yes.
It really is advantageous to tell them like the concept. Like in Sweetlands, you're like, building buildings is how to go. And so in Galactic Cruise, you say you got to build your ships. Get your ship. Yeah, you need the engine and the cockpit, and then you need blueprints, and then you need to supply that ship. You need to make sure you have the stuff, and then you launch your ship, and you need to launch as many ships as you can, because that's where the points are going to come from, is getting ships into space.
One thing that I do quite like about Galactic Cruise, so this was Elaine's pick for Game of the Year. This was not my pick for Game of the Year, but I did like it quite a lot, loved it even. And one thing I do like, and again, it's nice that we talked about Lacerda in contrast to this game, because I think a lot of people do compare these, because not just because of Ian, because he's done artwork for both, but there is an element of this, like there are a lot of little dials and levers that you need to pull and get these like little bonuses. But unlike a Lacerda game, it's very clear like what you need to do to get the thing that you need. Right? The action taking is not complex. It's like, I want to do this. I send a person to this action spot, and that person will do it.
That's what I wanted to talk about when I asked you that question about Speakeasy. Like,
yes.
What you needed to do, was it evident? Like where the final goal was, and what you needed to do to get there? Because I knew we were going to come back to this, was exactly what you just said. Is in Galactic Cruise, what you need to do is very evident on the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's like you said, it's launch ships, right? That's the objective of the game. And like what I liked about it immediately as well is like after my first play, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like the objective is to launch ships. But then immediately I had this like strategic question in my brain. Okay, is it just launch as many ships as possible? Or can I somehow finagle a strategy where, like, I launch these 2 Uber ships, maybe in the entire game, and they're like these just big point scoring bazookas that go off into space, and they trigger all the things because every duck has been lined up in a row, to trigger every bonus and everything. Or, can I go the opposite way? Can I somehow finagle that I just launched like 5 ships, but they're really small and really cheap and don't get me much, but through the various bonuses, I somehow, accumulate this critical mass. And what I liked about Galactic Cruise is that it kind of delivers on that promise, where every game you play, you can explore these ideas, and it's evident how to do it. You just need to somehow manage and squeak out how to do it. And not every game will like have the setup for it possible, because you need the right cards, you need the right, compartments for your spaceships, you need the right combination of like thrusters and cockpits and stuff like that, because they all, add their own variables. And in some games, things might be possible, in others, maybe not so much. But you can definitely try. And I think that was the fun part of that game for me, where I could continue exploring what at first felt like a shallow pool. Like, there's only many things you can do, but there's only so much strategy. But actually, the more you keep asking Galactic Cruise questions, the more it feels like it always has an answer up its sleeve. And it's surprising in that way.
Yeah, it's like the first game you play is like, oh, look, lad, I made this ship and I launched it, and now the game's over, and that was fun.
Yeah.
And then the next game, you realize it's like you just have to force things. You need to get it done, because in order to do that, you have such limited number of turns that you just got to go in. But to get back to the Lacerda part, because I actually have a segment here, it's called the non-Lacerda parts.
Right, the non-Lacerda parts. Nice.
Right. We have this reputation track that you get for all sorts of different reasons. And the great part about that is that you can go down that track to get those 1 or 2 things, and everything that you need is down there, be it popularity or resources or whatever you need is there. You have to take a big hit to get what you need, but at least, it's there when you need it. And
can I raise my hand immediately?
You sure can.
That is a Lacerda thing. The Gallerist has that. And also, to an extent, Kanban has that as well. Not quite the same, but the Gallerist definitely has that element where you can bump yourself down. So that feels very like, but I only remember this because I just played the Gallerist a couple of weeks ago, So, but yeah, strangely, that is a Lacerda bit. But I do
some of them.
Yeah,
some of the games do. And then there's the when you're either building your ship or you're launching your ship, there's things you can do at the last minute. Like, normally you can get the blueprints for free, and then you have to take another action to build it, or you can just take the build action and take that extra hit and just build them right from the supply.
Money. It's
right.
so
much
expensive.
Money. It is expensive, but you have that option, right? And same thing when you launch the ship. It's like, well, I need some last minute passengers. Like normally you have to like advertise this it's like action efficiency. I can take the 2 actions, or I could just launch and do this last minute sale and get the people on at the last minute, those type of things. And then there's playing the agenda cards. So this is another whole system where you get these cards and they have resource symbols in the bottom left-hand corner, so that, are you short that 1 fuel or that 1 food for when you launch your ship, you can always just use that card to do it. And just all these little bonuses that you can get. Whereas in a Lacerda, it's like, well, you didn't have the red gear. So
yeah. It's a lot more permissive, isn't it? Because there is that sort of element of, and especially with the cards, where and I love the duality of it, because the cards are actually so powerful. Like when I read what they could do, I was like, wait a minute, this is busted. Like, why would I not play this? And then when you realize that, like, at the last moment, instead of saving up for this like super turn where you can like, oh, I play this card and everything happens, right? No, you need it now. Like, you need it now, because launching ships is a race, because every time a player launches a ship, it advances the game clock immediately. And you're like, I need to be on the ball. I need to go now. Right now. I need to look. What can I do? I'm missing something. I have a card. Uh-oh. and that moment,
it's my special card.
Right.
It's a really cool one.
That moment is so beautiful and so enjoyable as well. And I really like that. And you're right, you don't see that in Lacerda games, because Lacerda games often will have this element of like, oh, Right. Okay. I know I can get this from somewhere, but I need to like rearrange my entire plan because every link of the chain needs to be perfectly aligned, and then if I take one element out, like I have to just restart and redo everything. Whereas Galactic Cruise feels different in that it's like I have this chain and it's missing one link. Wait a minute, I've got it. Right? Like, and that's kind of the difference in the experience, I think, between those two, any given Lacerda game and Galactic Cruise.
So just so people know, on your turn, it's like a sort of a worker placement game. On your turn, you're going to place some workers on the board, and that's going to let you do these actions of building your ship and other things. And you get to do two actions. You can do two of the same action, or you can link them. And that incorporates these cogs, which is like the one action I want to talk about. I'm not going to go through all the actions. It's just these cogs are very interesting because not only do they link all these worker placement things together, so when you place it, you can do the adjacent ones. You also put them up on this technology track, which gives you all these broken technologies that are going to help you throughout the game as well. And then on top of that, the cogs come off of your player board, which increase how many supplies you can hold. So it's this intricate balance of trying to get these out and where to put them. And yet another thing that incorporates these cogs is when you have to take the pull. It's one of these things where you don't get your workers back automatically. You have to take this sort of pullback action. And it's nice, the fact that it's just not your whole turn. You're just not pulling back your guys and, oh, that's my turn. Now I wait another 30 minutes while everyone does their thing. No, you decide on these every time a worker goes in the break room, whether or not you're pulling them back or you're getting a new worker. You get these little, and sometimes they're very useful. Like I said, sometimes you're short that one fuel and it's like, okay, well, I get to pull back this turn because it takes your whole turn to launch, and I go get that one fuel from the pullback. But on top of that, you get to do one action, and that one action has to be connected to where your cog is. So it's this very interesting, unique system that has intertwined throughout the entire game, and I love it.
I love it too. And I think the thing that I love about that action selection system is placing those cogs is that you really don't know at the beginning of the game where you want the cog to go because you haven't quite mapped out what you're going to need. And it's present in so many like worker placement games where like in other worker placement games, so for example, like Black Forest, right? Like where you move your worker matters because that kind of telegraphs where your possible actions expand. And this is kind of like a similar system, just it's very different where like where you place the cog, that's going to be like there permanently for the entire game. And you better make sure you get it right, but you never quite can. And there's always that like looking back on your past self and going, past Efka was a,
Yeah. I have made mistakes.
yeah.
I always try to do it like linking the two actions. It's like, okay, what would I do right after this action? It's like, okay, well, I'll probably get blueprints and then build. So I'll put it between if it's possible. And I like how you can randomize where all these action spots are every game, right? That's pretty cool. The other key part of this game that is the big hook for me is something that you already alluded to, and that is what brings about the end of the game and or each round. Every time, like you said, you launch a ship, you take one of your cubes and you put it sort of on this track. And when this track fills, that sort of ends around. And there's two ways you can get cubes in there, is if you achieve one of these goals or if you launch a ship. And you're going to get points based on how many cubes you have in there times or how many of these goals you have. It'll open up these little bird symbols. So it'll be bird symbols times how many cubes you have there. And I love that whole system.
It's nice because it does every time, and I've said this already, every time anyone launches a ship, it's like there's this big klaxon in your head going like, stop doing things now, like now, right?
You can hear that pendulum swinging back and forth, right? As the time clock clicks.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it kind of, forces you to ask yourself these questions. Like, what do you want to do this game? Do you want to be the big ship person? You can be the big ship person if you want to. But then all those little cube spots are going to get populated, not by you, but like maybe you're not the big ship person. Maybe you are the little ship. And like that's the fun part of it. I like how intrinsically interlinked all of that is. And it's so like as much fun as Galactic Cruise is to play, I think it's even more fun to think about because it feels so open-ended. And every game you finish, you're like what could I have done differently? And could I have done this completely differently? Like, and for me, that's the appeal of it. You know, like it's just fun to think about.
Yeah, we had that exact conversation right after the game we played this week. It was like, next week I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to the cockpit engine space first thing, and take that action twice. Have all three of my ships right there. Because how many times have you taken a build ship parts, but you only build one because that's that one, because it takes three. So you take it once to build two, and then it's like, okay, well, I want all three, so I'll take that action again inefficiently and just put that one last part in. Whereas if you had multiple ships, you could do it as many as you wanted. So and then not only that, because there's an engine bonus whenever you take a cockpit engine duo, there's an engine bonus you get, so you'll get two of those bonuses right off the start. Sure, at the end of the game you might get negative points if you don't launch these ships, but that's a later Walker problem. This is not a now Walker problem. We get all our ships and we start getting them built, and that's going to be the strategy for my next game of Galactic Cruise.
I love that it has the space for that kind of humor as well, because fundamentally it is a very absurd setting, and avoiding politics. It is a genre that is often used for pastiche of economic systems and political systems, because it's like retrofuturism, and it's always to poke fun of like old ideas effectively. And so this concept of like you're just building rockets that are never going to launch, I think that's fundamentally very funny. But to find space for that in this really like complex game and still have that like humor that emerges through mechanisms rather than like something written on a card. And it does do that. And I think that's one of the things that slightly annoys me about the game is like, oh, this is a board game arena in a spaceship because we're playing a board game. Haha, funny.
Well, that's that one tile. Some of the other tiles are actually kind of funny. It's like a trampoline park and a lobster buffet, right?
Sure, yeah. It's absurd, right? Yeah.
It's crazy.
And that's fine. And sometimes it is funny, but to me, more funny is that there is room to just do very silly things that fundamentally shouldn't work, and you shouldn't be rewarded for that. But you are, yes, you shouldn't build a rocket that doesn't ever launch. And it's funny that like there is a penalty for it, but the benefits outweigh the penalty sometimes, and you still do it anyway.
And I have to say, I'm going to touch on it because there are like I said, you can get more workers. There's these specialists you can buy. And I have to say, in like the 7 to 8 games I've played, I've yet to ever even bring out one.
Oh, really?
Really. They're just so expensive.
They
are. By the time they get cheaper, because it's one of these things, as you bring stuff off your tableau, it brings the price down of these specialists more and more. And I always feel by the time I get it cheap enough that I can afford it, the games, it's too late. It's too late.
Well, that's funny. I think I've gone for them like hard every game, like, give me the specialists. I'm
going to have to try that next time. But much like every other game where it's like, okay, this game, I'm going to do this. And like turn one, that's like out the window and I'm, back to what I normally do or something completely different. And so that will do it for Galactic Cruise, one of my favorite games from 2025. And I'm glad I got it. There's so many things that you can change up every game, like where all those action spots are. The specialists that we just talked about, they have a special ability that changes every game as well.
I can't wait to play it again. I'm really, really excited. Now, just like having this conversation, I'm like, I miss this game. It's so good.
So I want to thank you very much again for coming on the show. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll see everyone next week. Peace!
You've been listening to So Very Wrong About Games, a board gaming podcast about board games produced by Michael Walker. You can find all our information at SoWrongGames.com. Special thanks to What Does It Eat for allowing us to use their most excellent song, FOS, as our intro. You can find them at WhatDoesItEat.com. We hope to see you again soon, and as always, try to be right, but remember, you're so very wrong.